Welcome to the Real Estate Scripts Podcast, the show that helps you know what to say when you're talking to buyers and sellers so that you can close more deals and earn more money. I'm Darren Tunstall, a real estate professional, coach, and #1 best-selling author. Let's get into this. Before we begin today's episode, I want to clarify some important points. I am a licensed real estate agent and my DRE number is 018534445. It's crucial to note that this podcast operates independently of my affiliation with Keller Williams Realty and any realtor associations. My primary goal with this podcast is to provide you, our listeners, with valuable information, insights, and practical tools. As a reminder, the purpose of Scripts and Dialogues is to come, learn, practice, and be prepared to fail forward. This is where we make mistakes and help each other out, but we're mostly interested in seeing how we can get better. First, we read through the script word for word, and then we go back and put it into our own natural tone, style, and phrasing. You won't know what to say until you go through the script. So, with that said, many people will say, that's not how I sound, and I totally get it. That's not how you sound. But that is the reason why we practice every day, so that the script becomes you and in your own voice. So, read it word for word first, then go back and put it into your own natural tone, style, and phrasing, and I think it'll work out. So this one is called Explaining the Net Sheet to a Homeowner. In this particular one, I have it listed today that we're going to do something different, but I kind of want to go over this particular script because I realize that we talk about this quite a bit, but we don't necessarily have an actual script that goes over explaining the net sheet to a homeowner. This is somebody who's interested in selling their house. In this scenario, you are discussing the net sheet with a homeowner who needs to sell their home, focusing on expenses and the total amount they will receive without mentioning commission percentages. So just to clarify, they will eventually see the commission percentages in the contract. Okay, but we're discussing it over the net sheet first because that's where all the expenses are laid out, including the amount of money that they pay in commissions. The requirements are to be clear and detailed net sheet, focused on the bottom line, open communication, and reassurance and confidence. The intention is to explain the net sheet and all associated costs to the seller transparently, ensuring they are comfortable with the total amount they will receive after expenses, including the agent's commissions. So that is what we're going over today. Hey, Bridget, how are you? Let's go ahead and break out for today. Emily, let's have you talk to Bridget first. And let's have you talk to Bridget first. She'll be the homeowner who is interested in selling the house, and you'll be going over her over the net sheet with her. And that net sheet is something that I added to the chat box. So if you didn't get it, I'll add it again right now. So whenever you're ready, Emily.
Hi, Bridget. Thanks for meeting with me today. How are you feeling about the process so far?
Pretty good. It seems like there's a lot involved.
Yeah. Well, great to hear. I'm glad you're feeling good. Today, I want to walk you through something called a net sheet. This document will give us a clear picture of what you can expect to walk away with after selling your home. Sound good?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Awesome. So the net sheet includes all the expenses you'll incur during the sale. This covers things like title insurance, escrow fees, any repairs or concessions we might need to make. The goal is to ensure there are no surprises down the road.
That makes sense.
Okay. Well, let's start by looking at the selling price of your home. Based on the market analysis, we're aiming for $950,000. Now, here are the estimated expenses, as you see down this column. Okay, you'll see here costs for title insurance, escrow fees, and a few other necessary expenses. Now, this amount here is the total that goes to the real estate agent, which is my team and me. And by the time we get to the listing contract, you'll see the percentage. But what's most important is how much you get in your bank account after all the expenses are paid. Do you see this at the bottom?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Awesome. So after subtracting all the costs from the selling price, we get to the bottom line. And this is the amount you'll receive in your bank account. How does that amount look to you?
Wow, I just never knew there were so many fees associated with selling your home. I guess I really only ever thought about commissions.
Nope, there's a few other things too that you have to consider, but it's a good thing that you've owned your home for quite some time because you're walking away with like 3 times what you paid for it. Okay, so the main thing is that we want you to feel confident and comfortable with every part of the process. Are there any expenses or parts of this net sheet that you have questions about or that I can clarify for you?
Yeah, so I guess I don't really, you know, are all these expenses necessary, or like can escrow and title be combined, or I haven't even heard of some of these types of things. So I was just curious if any of these you feel are maybe not necessary.
Um, uh, Most of them are necessary. There are some of them that we can negotiate as far as either the seller of the home pays or the buyer of the home pays. Typically, the ones on this column are the ones that you would pay for. However, everything's negotiable. Okay. Let's maybe sit down and go over it a little bit more in detail. Transparency is key, and I want to make sure you have a full understanding of what to expect. If you're feeling good about this, we can move forward to the next step. But if you want to sit down and go dive deeper into each one, I'm happy to do that.
Gotcha. I mean, it sounds like these are all necessary. So I guess I don't have any specific questions about it.
Okay, and you know what? You always have a go back. If there's something you don't understand and you want to go back and have it explained, I'm happy to do that. So let's get this home sold. And with that amount in your bank account, you'll be able to move to Texas in no time. So thanks again for your trust and partnership in the process, and we'll keep everything smooth and straightforward from here.
Thanks, Emily.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Love it. Love the questions. Awesome. And we just lost Judy.
Uh-oh. She's like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, she's like, I'm
Get
out. Just-
So I have a question.
yeah.
And I didn't want to interrupt because Emily was crushing it. So like she's going over this to get to the point where she can say, okay, let's sign the contract, and that makes sense. But what you're suggesting is that we go over the details of the commission at the point of signing the contract, not right now. Is that correct?
This is part, in my opinion, this is part of your presentation. So when you're going to a listing appointment, you should be bringing a CMA, you should be bringing the net sheet, a preliminary title report, all this supporting documentation, right? And ultimately, you want to have the conversation about here's what we're looking at. Your home is valued at 950 according to the CMAs that we just reviewed. Number one. Number two, these are the costs that are involved, typical costs that are involved, right? And always get like a high and a low too for the CMA, I mean the net sheet as well. But these are the typical costs involved, including the agent's commission. And we're not really wanting to talk about percentages right now because we know that percentages will come up later in the contract when we review that with them. We just want to show them the bottom dollar. It goes back to that one question, how much do you want to net? Are you concerned about the percentage or are you concerned about how much you want to net? And I think even with the given rules today, this is just another way of looking at it and being fully transparent. Okay, based on what we talked about earlier, yes, it is at 6%, but we've already had the discussion that you were okay with this amount of money in your bank account. Are you still okay with that amount? And I think the conversation is much easier to have than it is to just say, yeah, my percentage is 6% right out the gate.
Yeah, because then people are totaling in their head and they're not accurately, I think, thinking of what is actually 6% and what actually you know, does that cover when they see their numbers bigger than all the other numbers, I think that's the catch, right?
Yeah, that, and to touch on something else you asked about, like it's we're wanting to show them the numbers and some of the expenses involved, some of which are negotiable, right? And we can have that conversation later on as well. But typically, this is what it's about. Now, we don't want to get off too far into the weeds either about every single little expense. But you know what? I love the fact that, hey, Emily just said, if you want to go back and have that discussion, let's do it. I full transparency. I want you to feel comfortable. I want you to be able to come to me if you have questions about any of these things. And by God, if I don't know, we're going to go and find out.
Well,
Let's,
Yeah,
sometimes people rush
great
into
job.
stuff and then they're like, oh, I should have asked this question
right, right.
in anything we do.
So I have one more follow-up question, if you don't mind. With all the changes happening with the net sheet, are you guys still going to put both, like the whatever your full commission is to split, potentially assuming there's a buyer's agent involved, or are you just going to put your fee in net? Because like I went on a listing appointment last week. He's not ready to list until September. The change will already be in place. And I kind of was like, well, I wasn't quite sure how much I should talk buyer's agents commissions with him because in California, they're removing it off our contract completely.
Yeah. That's a really good question. And I have two scripts ready to go right now that I haven't released yet. The challenge is we don't really know what to expect at the moment.
Right.
So right now, I would say, as of right now, I would say do things as normal, put it on there. I still think it's a fantastic idea for the seller to pay for the buyer's commission. Um,
Agreed.
but if the question comes up, then there are documents that we can use or contracts that we can use to help have that conversation with a buyer if the seller is going to pay, or with the buyer if the seller is not going to pay, and vice versa. So there are documents ready to go. I'm just not prepped well, I don't want to say I'm not prepped because the scripts are done. I'm just not ready to release those yet until my broker says it's okay and do that. Um, so right now I would say just continue as normal. The whole point of this is transparency and to give people the option as to whether they want to offer that or not. They don't have to, but if we show them the value in having a buyer's agent, then I think they're going to want to.
Agreed.
Yeah. Uh, because the whole thing is, well, I don't want to go too far into it, but the whole thing is if you as a listing agent are going to list a home and the seller does not want to pay, and a buyer comes along and says, hey, I want to buy that house. Now you have put yourself in a position of asking yourself the question, what is my fiduciary responsibility? And there's a fine line there. And it's like, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. So, right now. And, with everybody scrambling, rewriting all the contracts, changing the laws, there's so much in the air right now that I think we should just stop, think, see what's going on, and then we can decide how we're going to move forward. Ask a lot of questions of your broker, attorney, team leader, all that. You guys know the drill for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. With what you heard, I know you're driving and this was an attachment. You think you could recreate that conversation off the top of your head?
It won't be as pretty as Emily, I can promise you that.
Well,
But I will stumble through it, no problem.
you'll be fine. You'll be fine. But you get the point. It's through the net sheet that we're having this discussion before we get to the actual listing contract. So when you're ready, Bridget, go for it.
Wonderful. Well, Emily, again, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. And now that we've gone over the marketing and the value of your home, what I would like to go over is my estimated seller proceeds, or our net sheet, which essentially goes over all of the costs associated with selling your home. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Wonderful. So if you look here, here is a copy of the net sheet. This is based on the assumption of us selling your home at $1 million, and based on the loan amount that you currently owe from the document you showed me from your lender, and based on proceeds and based on estimates of what we think will need to be done to your property. This also includes escrow and title fees and all the standard fees here in California, in Southern California, that a seller typically pays for. On occasion, sometimes a buyer may try to entice you to accept their offer and pay for it, but a vast majority of the time, these are fees paid for by a seller. Do you have any questions about any of these fees specifically?
Not really.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let's go ahead and go over the contract together so we can get your home sold and get you moved out to Florida.
Okay.
All right. Well, that was simple.
Yeah, I think Emily was being kind to me because I was driving.
Well, you know what? I would love to do it again, but this time mention, this is what the bottom dollar is, and ask them, how does that amount look in how will that amount look in your bank account? But this time I want to do it slightly different. Emily's calling you. You've sent her this net sheet. You're driving down the road and you're having a conversation over the phone about this net sheet. So she's got some expenses. Can we try that angle a little bit just to make it more of a real life scenario, because it is?
Sure. Thanks, Emily, for calling. Did you have any specific questions?
Yeah, what the heck is this thing you sent me? I don't understand it. You said that you could sell my house for $1 million, but I'm only walking away with, 8 something. I don't understand.
So this, I'm glad you asked. This was based on the information that you provided as far as how much you owe on your loan and the closing costs associated with selling a home. So that includes—
I thought the buyer pays for closing costs. I don't get it.
So the buyer pays for their closing costs and the seller has their own closing costs. So when you bought the home, you probably had lender fees you had to pay, appraisal fees, inspection fees, on top of the escrow and title fees. As a seller, you're not responsible for most of those items, just your portion of the escrow and title fees. You don't have to pay the lender fees, the appraisal fees, inspection fees. That's all on the buyer.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Kind of. I don't know.
What?
This doesn't seem like it adds up. If you're selling my house is pretty much paid off. So I'm not understanding. These fees add up to quite a lot. So
to sell your home, percentage wise, it's usually around, the fees add up to about 7%, 7.5% typically to sell your home. So there's a lot of people associated with selling your home, between escrow and title, the banks, of course, the buyer's broker, myself, transaction coordinators.
Transaction coordinators. I thought you're the one who coordinates everything.
Well, I have a
understand.
I have a transaction coordinator that I pay to double check and make sure all the paperwork—
That you pay. So why am I paying?
You're not paying the transaction coordinator.
Oh, I thought that you said that. So I thought you said I had to pay them. Okay.
I was just saying there's a lot of people involved in the transaction, and that's why there's so many fees associated with that.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, well, maybe we should sit down and go over this when you have time, because I need a little more clarification. This isn't adding up to me.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll be back in front of my computer in about 20 minutes if you wanted to go.
No, I think we need to meet in person.
Sure. Would you like to meet this afternoon?
Yeah, can you come by the house?
Absolutely. How about 3 o'clock?
That works perfectly. Thank you.
Wonderful. Is there any other questions besides the net sheet that you have that I want to make sure I'm prepared we can go over when we meet?
No, I'm going to write down all my questions to make sure I don't forget anything when you get here.
Wonderful. I look forward to seeing you at 3. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
All right. Love that. This is a week for seller objections. And this is the one that I incorporated into it. This is off the site. This is not the same exact one that we're practicing on the site. I just thought it was a very much needed script to have based around the net sheet. But that was great because she pushed back, and I think you did well at answering it. And she wants you to come by, and that's okay because that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
How'd you feel about it, Bridget?
Yeah, I probably personally, I like to do a lot of my meetings on Zoom, so I probably would have pushed a little bit harder to do it on Zoom. Just because I like to be efficient, and most of my meetings are on Zoom these days. But for the sake of the exercise, I was like, sure, let's meet. I'm totally available and have plenty of free time this afternoon. Why not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're
Just
all
sitting around waiting for Emily to call me all day.
well, a lot of times we go through a script and we've done the whole presentation, did all the marketing, sold the house, and everybody was happy, all in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's a regular, sell this house episode on TV. No, you did fantastic, and I totally get it. For being time is of the essence. You did a great job. And Zoom is good too, except I think sometimes, what about our older clientele sometimes,
Yes.
75, 80 years old. They might need a little more in-person type stuff, here and there. Not that they can't use Zoom, I just don't want to, I'm just saying people who are not very as familiar with Zoom might need some in-person type appointments here and there.
And that's kind of what I was going for.
Yeah.
Being older, my house is paid off. Been there a while.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't do DocuSign either, so you've got to do it in person.
Yep.
Exactly. So that's another reason why getting familiar with contracts to be able to do a wet signature versus the digital signature, you really need to know where to point. Not everything has a highlight or a sign here, little yellow sticky tag that's digital. All right. And Debbie and Wendy, how'd you do?
We did good. We both went through it the first time, and then I kind of just went on my own tangent on the last one. So I was taking it from the aspect that Wendy was concerned about all the money for commissions, and I want to show her, well, the house you bought in Florida, you wanted to pay cash and have a little extra, and this is your net sheet, and this is what you'll end up with. And that made her happy.
There you go. Yeah. Describe to a third grader or a fourth grader mentality. Really, I'm serious. I mean,
Well, that's what they always say is to the lowest common denominator. So it's just really knowing your audience. Some people just want to sign here, and some people want their hands held through every line of every contract. So
yeah.
Yep.
I'm curious, how does everybody feel about having this conversation from a net proceeds perspective versus just coming straight out the gate? I charge 6 to 7%.
it depends on the audience, I think.
I think so too. I was just going to say that. I think Debbie hit it on the head there. Depends on who you're talking to. I think it's always a good idea to be prepared for either. Maybe you start out one way and then they want more details. So then you bring out the net sheet and say, okay, here's the breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's good. I was just kind of curious. But at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that transparency is key. Transparency, transparency, transparency. Everything is negotiable. We're just showing them different ways of thinking about how the expenses in the transaction are paid. And using a net sheet is a great way to put all these expenses, including your commission. And I loved that Bridget went back and listed everybody, you know, appraisal, inspector, title fees, escrow fees. My commissions are paid as well. You know, there's other people involved in the transaction, like transaction coordinators, which is what I pay, you know. Combining that with the script as well later on with like, you know, geez, your commission is high. Well, I mean, you know, I only keep 3% and 1% goes to taxes. The other percent goes to my broker and I get to keep 1% as well, which I have to pay taxes on too. So there's a whole different way. I mean, with all the scripts and all the ones that we practice, and you can combine these and have have intelligent conversations. But you got to be here. You got to do that every single day, right? To get this.
Yep.
So, but I think you all did a fantastic job. Anything else to add before we go? All right, lead generation's next, and good job, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Great topic. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. All right, so that's the script. I hope that you found it useful. Just head over to realestatescriptspractice.com for more resources and downloads. This content is for educational purposes only and does not make any guarantees. We suggest you seek the help and/or advice of your broker, coach, mentor, office manager, attorney, and/or financial advisor. Brought to you by Darren Tunstall, a licensed real estate agent, DRE number 018534445. This content operates independently of Darren's affiliation with Keller Williams Realty and any realtor associations. The intention is to provide you with valuable information, insights, and practical tools. Please note that all results may vary and participants are responsible for their own actions.